Thanks ever so much. You might want to hold the applause to see if I survive the next 15 minutes or not. What a difficult act to follow. Hats off, Kadri, and to all your colleagues. It's absolutely wonderful to see what you've been doing there. It's just packed full of initiatives. I've, of course, got the hardest job in the world. I didn't get to see Kadri's presentation until I came along here this evening. So I've tried to guess what was going to be coming, having spent a bit of time with your colleague Krista a couple of weeks ago to try and understand how I can respond to something I've not actually heard yet. So it's a really interesting challenge for me today. So I kind of started off by thinking, well, it's about a whole city plan. The thing about a whole city plan is understanding what your baseline is. It's 2 million tonnes, our baseline in Liverpool. I've got a kind of environmental engineering background, so everything I do relates back to data and facts and that sort of thing. So what I've tried to do is pick up the whole picture. And this is the challenge that we've got. We've got 2 million tonnes across a number of different sectors. It's roughly a third businesses, a third housing, and a third transport, with smaller proportions for wastes and little tiny slithers for agriculture and ecology, which act as a bit of an offset. That misses out some of the big picture stuff, aviation and shipping. They're really the elephants in the room that nobody's talked about. They've only very recently come into the emissions trading scheme, so we haven't managed to control them. But then we're also looking at materials impacts as well. We've got potentially another 500,000 or tonnes or so of emissions related to foods and goods and materials and that sort of thing. So actually the size of our beast when it comes to committing a whole city to decarbonisation kind of starts here with the data side. So that's 2 million official tonnes of carbon and an extra 2.5 million for the stuff that we don't see easily. But it really takes me back to what Kadri and her colleagues in Tallinn have been doing is incredible because it's all about the grassroots. I've kind of come away as an environmentalist thinking about doing projects like this, and I've been taking a step back to go, how do we cover that whole city, 2 million tonnes of emissions? So we've developed a bit of a plan. It involves retrofitting every house in Liverpool, regardless who owns it. No such thing as a challenge too big, I say. We've got the construction of festival gardens as the opportunity to do a net zero site in construction, operation and materials. Again, we like a good challenge, but that's going to set the future for planning. And then we've got development of district heat networks across the city of Liverpool, something that's totally going to displace the 1.5 billion kilowatt hours of gas that our city burns every year across housing, industry and commerce. The site that we're sat in at the moment is quite a new site. It's very novel. It's got lots of great technology, including a combined heat and power plant that produces heat very efficiently. It heats the Spine next door, it heats the Novotel, it heats a couple of other buildings. But guess what? It still uses gas. So this is one of the great problems that I inherited in Liverpool City Council, because we now have to do something about this. So we're getting through the grant funding to try and find an alternative, and it's looking like server heat, so waste heat from the AI industry, combined with air source heat pumps. And we can actually get the maths to stack up. But anyway, back to what we've heard tonight from Kadri. It's been absolutely inspirational. There's tons of work on the greening of the city. There's tons of community groups involved. There's tons of work with citizens. And the more I look at fancy plans like this, the more I realise how important it is to engage our citizens. If we don't engage them from the start and come out in 2 years' time going, guess what? We're a bunch of smart arses that have been working behind closed doors with our over-eager fingers on our calculators, and we've got the most brilliant plan. Now, do you want a white heat pump or a silver heat pump? That's really not going to work. What's become very clear is that we have to bring people right in from the start. brilliant having colleagues like Liam. Liam put us on the path of citizen engagement a few months ago. Quite like your plans, but where are the people in this? And he's absolutely right, because the people need to be there to endorse it. People in Anfield that I've met recently are quite vocal on the subject. They don't really give us stuff about climate change. They give more of a stuff about, am I going to be able to put the heating on tonight, or am I going to feed the family? So what are they going to think when we come around going, well, we're planning to spend £25,000 per home on retrofitting, you'll never have a heating bill again. And quite understandably, they're not going to be bought into that. They're not going to let us do what we need to do unless we involve them in the process now. It's made us realise that the whole art of engagement is somewhere on a scale like this, where it goes from telling people what to do, like inflicting it, maybe not even telling them, just going out there and doing it on one end of the scale, to actually starting to inform your citizens and bring them around to what we're doing. And not only that, but actually taking a steer from them. And that's really what shined out through and through this. You do work with citizens. You've got green ambassadors out there championing this stuff. You know, we've got 2 major football teams. We've got some of the biggest pop stars in the world. We've got international athletes that work for us. So that's how we reach some of our citizens. We've also got some very vulnerable citizens, people that aren't going to pick up the message because of language or ability. And that's something that I learned very importantly at the fire service. If you want to get through to your communities, you need to be able to speak their language and have people that can communicate with them. So with the most fantastic selection of advocates in the fire service, blind people's advocates, deaf people's advocates, Polish speaking, various different Indian language speaking advocates. It was fantastic. Through that, the fire service managed to get the fire safety message out to everyone that needed it and reduce fire deaths in Liverpool. And that's something I'm learning from. But whereas I was previously quite dismissive about the small end of projects, we've got Friends of Parks, we've got small community groups that do stuff at small scale. But what they do is reach hearts and minds at their level right across the city. So I've learned so much from today about enabling the nice things, the beautiful things, the things that bring urban parks in. I mean, we've got some great work that goes on already. We've got Juliet, I work with a brilliant colleague, Juliet Staples, that's been spending a lot of European research money putting in city trees, living walls, sustainable urban drainage systems, that sort of thing. But then the art for me is, how do we turn that into a city-level strategic piece of work? And that's really about, from where I stand, seeing who makes financial benefit from this. So if we're putting in sustainable urban drainage systems and attenuating all the rainwater that falls on our beautiful city, then it's the water companies that benefit. So what we're not having is an impact on flooding and stormwater discharges through storm overflows. So if they're getting the benefit from that and they're not getting fines and their infrastructure isn't getting damaged by the floodwater, then surely there's a case that they can cough up some money to help this. Surely there's a case that our planners can start to weave this into local guidance so we make new developers follow this. But time and time again, my thinking comes back to your wise words. It's been such a lovely view of the small, the community-led. I'm kind of scratching my head now going, well, we're just at the point where I'm sat down with University of Liverpool, John Moores University, lots of research partners in Mitsubishi, in NSG Pilkington, you know, the glass people in St Helens, heat pump manufacturers, solar panel manufacturers, and that's great, but where's the voice of the people in this? And the voice of the people needs to be there. Love to see this stuff about innovation. Our innovation with businesses is sharing this. This is our simple plan for decarbonising Liverpool City Council. Clearly sets out what our fossil fuel emissions are. It's the top up of the bar. Sets out where our green electricity is, the bottom half of the bar, so we can see the stuff that we've got to address. We can measure the projects that are going to start to displace that gas. So our first step towards innovation is trying to get our 20,000 businesses signed up to this, so they can make a difference as well. But that's not where the innovation stops. When looking at aviation and shipping, we realise they've got a huge way to go, and they haven't got some very convincing targets. So our gift is engagement, and our gift is also infrastructure. We've got some brilliant colleagues at the Combined Authority that have been planning synthetic aviation fuel, shore power, airfield power, so we can start to become the test bed for electric planes, for electric ships, ships that can use hydrogenated vegetable oil and other waste products to run themselves with. If we can provide these as reasonable alternatives to people like EasyJet and whoever else uses the city, then we can hope that they can put their test planes and their test ships here, and we can start to create what we need in Liverpool to encourage them. But then that also gives us a chance to control what's coming down the line in a few years' time as well. So we can bring in the support and the guidance, the lovely carrot, and then we can work with our planners to bring in the stick afterwards. Follow Norway's model. You know, Norway have banned ships with heavy fuel oil from going through fields. It's going to cover the whole of Norway within a few years' time, and that's quite adventurous. I love the stuff with the youth song and dance. I love the plastic-free events as well. I joined Liverpool City Council just as Eurovision was announced as coming to us, and suddenly our culture team was knocking on my door going, help, we've said it's going to be the most sustainable Eurovision ever, but we're not quite sure what to do. So it was really exciting. We managed to work through an action plan to try and get rid of diesel generators. We couldn't get rid of diesel generators, so we got them converted to hydrogenated vegetable oil, so it was chip fat powered in the Eurovision village and for the BBC production area backups. We tried to put recycling in, but guess what? In a crowd of 10,000 people, it's really very difficult to encourage people to use the right bins. So I love your work of stopping the plastics getting out of there in the first place. I mean, we did things like send the waste there that was sucked up with street cleaners down to what we call a dirty MRF, a materials recycling facility that can try and separate the metals from the paper and that sort of thing. But it still goes back to if you do your planning and you get the controls right, then you can make a difference. So we caused a bit of a revolution with Eurovision. It was the first event that we actually measured the carbon footprint on. It was about 7,000 tonnes. Of that, there's only about 1,000 or 2,000 tonnes that was down to the event itself. The rest of it was down to transport. So really inspirational to hear about the free bus services, the electrification of the plant. I mean, we've got electric buses in Liverpool. I caught one up there and it was starting to smoulder on its way up Brownlow Hill. So we've got a little bit of a way to go, but the foundations are there. But what I picked up on the most today, and I will repeat myself again, is those community level events and engagements are wonderful. It makes your city shine. It's definitely behind why you've got the European Green Capital status and had it last year, and that's absolutely wonderful. So what I'm taking away from today is stop having a downer on the small stuff. Don't get so caught up with the big strategic stuff. That's important, we'll do that in the background, but we'll do it with our communities, side by side, helping us find the way forwards. But we must push on as many of the small projects as we can to get that culture, that look, that feel, that smell, the vision of a green city out there so that everyone knows that Liverpool's going to be hot on the heels for those European green capitals.